It was a normal Tuesday afternoon at Brookwood Middle School. The sound of lunch trays, loud laughter, and squeaky shoes filled the cafeteria. Students moved from table to table, chatting, joking, and enjoying their short break before class. Miss Alina, a soft-spoken teacher in her early 30s, stood near the lunch counter. She wasn't on duty today, but she often helped the staff during lunch, just to feel useful. She loved being around students, even if most of them didn't notice her. She smiled as she handed napkins to a group of 7th graders, wiped down a nearby table, and adjusted a wobbly chair. Her quiet kindness was well known, but most kids just saw her as the nice teacher who didn't talk much. Today, everything changed. At the far end of the cafeteria, a new student walked in. His name was Rayan, and no one really knew much about him. He had joined the school just last week. He didn't talk to anyone, didn't smile, and always sat alone. There was something distant about him, something heavy. Rayan's eyes scanned the room slowly, like he was searching for someone. Then his eyes stopped. They landed on Miss Alina. He froze. So did his breath. It was her. His hands shook slightly as he gripped his lunch tray. One of the boys sitting nearby noticed him staring and joked, "You okay, man? You look like you saw a ghost." Rayan didn't answer. Instead, he walked forward, slowly, step by step. Every sound in the cafeteria seemed to disappear, except the sound of his shoes on the floor. Miss Alina turned just in time to see him. Coming toward her, she gave him a polite smile, thinking maybe he needed help. But before she could speak, Rayan stopped right in front of her. Then, in a loud, shaky voice, he said, "Mom." The whole cafeteria went silent. Forks dropped. Chairs stopped moving. Students looked up in confusion. Someone even dropped their juice box. Miss Alina stared at him, confused. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" she asked gently. Rayan's eyes didn't blink. "You're my mom," he repeated. "Aren't you?" Alina's heart dropped. She felt like someone had punched the air out of her chest. She looked around. Students were staring. Teachers frozen. A staff member holding a tray halfway in the air. Everyone had heard him. Her voice cracked as she spoke again. "Sweetheart, I think you're mistaken. I don't have children." But Rayan didn't back away. His voice was quieter now, but full of pain. "Yes, you do. You had a baby? A boy a long time ago." Her hands began to shake. Double quotes. "How do you know that?" she whispered. Rayan didn't answer. Instead, he pulled something from his backpack, a folded piece of paper. Old and faded, he held it out. She took it with trembling fingers and opened it. Slowly, it was a photo. A grainy black and white picture of a young woman in a hospital bed, holding a tiny baby. Alina stared at the photo. Her breath stopped. It was her years ago. A time she had locked away deep in her heart. The room around her began to spin. 17 years ago, Alina had made a mistake. A teenage mistake. She had fallen in love with someone who disappeared the moment he found out she was pregnant. Her family had sent her away to a far clinic outside the city. The doctors there told her the baby had died during birth. She was too weak, too heartbroken to question it. After that, she never spoke of it again, not to anyone, not even to herself. She had buried it deep, locked it in a dark room inside her heart. But now, here was a boy, holding a photo she had never seen, calling her mom. The school principal rushed over. "What's going on here?" he asked firmly. Alina tried to speak, but her voice broke. Rayan stood quietly beside her, still staring. The principal looked between them, confused. "Miss Alina, do you know this student?" "No," she whispered. "I don't think so." Rayan's voice was calm. "My name is Rayan. I was adopted. My foster parents told me I was abandoned, but I found this photo hidden in an old box after they passed away. The name written on the back was yours." He held out the back of the photo. There, in faded ink, were the words, "For Alina, with love. Your baby is safe." The principal was speechless. "Let's go to the office," he finally said, trying to regain control. Rayan didn't argue, but before walking away, he looked around the cafeteria. All eyes were on him. Some students whispered. Others looked shocked. A few laughed uncomfortably. He said one more thing, loudly and clearly. "She's my mom. I don't care if she remembers or not. I know the truth." And then he walked out, leaving Miss Alina standing in the middle of the silence. Later that day, in the school office, things were tense. The principal asked Miss Alina to take the rest of the day off. "I'm not punishing you," he said softly, "but this situation is sensitive. It might be better to give you both some space." Alina didn't argue. She was too numb to speak. As she walked out of the school building, the wind felt cold. The sun felt dim. Her mind raced. Was it possible? Could her son, the baby she had cried for, prayed for, mourned, be alive? Could this boy, this quiet, broken-eyed boy, really be her child? That night, she sat alone on her bed. The photo was in her hand again. This time, she turned it over, and for the first time, she saw something she hadn't noticed before. In the corner of the photo, there was a bracelet on the baby's wrist, a hospital ID tag. It had a number dot, and under that number, it said, "Baby Boy A. Williams," her full name. Tears fell quietly down her face. This wasn't just a strange moment at lunch. This was something deeper, something life-changing, something she never saw coming. But one thing was clear. Now, The past was knocking, and it had the voice of a boy who called her mom. Alina didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the photo clutched in her hand. It felt like her entire world had flipped upside down. The same quiet life she had built for years now felt like it was standing on broken glass. Her heart ached with one question. What if he's really my son? She had spent so many years trying to forget, trying to move on from a mistake that no one ever let her speak about. But now, the past had walked right up to her and called her mom. The next morning, she called in sick. Her hands were still shaking. She couldn't face the school. She couldn't face the students. Most of all, she couldn't face Rayan. Not yet. She made tea and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the folded photograph. The more she looked at it, the more real it felt. The eyes of the baby, the way her hair looked back then, the hospital gown, the smile she wore, a tired but proud smile, a smile of a young mother who had just given birth. She touched the image softly. I thought you were gone, she whispered years ago. When she was just 17, Alina had made the hardest decision of her life. She hadn't planned to get pregnant. The boy she loved had promised forever, but ran the moment she told him. Her parents were angry, not disappointed, angry. They told her she had ruined her future, that no one would want her now, that she had embarrassed them. They sent her away to a place outside the city, a clinic they found through a family friend. It'll be better there, her mother had said. Less shame. At the clinic, the nurses were cold. The walls smelled of bleach. Alina had given birth alone, without anyone by her side. She remembered the screaming, the pain, the silence. Then a nurse had come in, placed a gentle hand on her arm, and whispered, I'm sorry, the baby didn't make it. She had blacked out. When she woke again, the baby was gone. No name, number, papers, nothing. Just emptiness. And no one ever talked about it again. Now, almost 18 years later, the photo said otherwise. And the boy at school, Rayan? He had her eyes. By afternoon, Alina stood outside the old clinic. It had changed a lot. The sign was new, the paint fresher, but she recognized the tall gate, the narrow hallways, and the oak tree near the entrance. Her legs felt heavy as she walked in. A receptionist looked up. Can I help you? Alina smiled politely. Yes, I used to be a patient here, many years ago. I was hoping to see some old records. The woman gave her a suspicious look. Do you have your patient ID? Alina shook her head. It was almost 2 decades ago. I don't even know if you'll find it. I'm sorry, the woman said. We don't give out information without ID or a legal request. Alina leaned in, her voice cracked. Please, I think the child I was told had died may still be alive. I just need to know the truth. The receptionist paused, then quietly said, wait here. She walked into a back office and didn't return for a long time. When she finally came back, she handed Alina a yellow folder. No copies. You can look at it here. 5 minutes. Alina opened it with trembling hands. Her name was there. Date of admission. Pregnancy notes. Delivery date. But under child outcome, it simply said transferred. No death record, no burial note. No explanation. Transferred to where? And why? She looked up. What does transferred mean? The receptionist shrugged. Some babies were placed in care. It depended on the situation. But if it says transferred, it means the child didn't die here. Alina felt like her breath had stopped. So it was true. They had lied to her. Outside the clinic, she stood in the parking lot for a long time. Her mind raced. Someone had stolen her baby. Not lost. Not dead. Taken. And now he had come back. Alina returned home and pulled out a dusty box from the top shelf of her closet. It held all the memories she had buried. A hospital bracelet with her name, a note from a nurse named Diane, an old sweater she had worn during her pregnancy. She had kept it all, even though she had tried to forget. And now, that note caught her eye. It said, you have the right to know. Anything ever feels wrong, come back. Nursey, Journey. Her hands shook. Who was this nurse? Why had she left the note? And was she still alive? That night, Alina sat on the floor, surrounded by the past. She didn't cry, not yet. Instead, she opened her laptop and typed the words, Diane Nurse. Maternity Brookville 2005. Pages loaded slowly. Most were old articles, clinic records, social media posts. Then, she found a lead. Diane S. Matthews. Retired nurse, now lives in Crestwood Village. There was a phone number listed under a community page. Alina copied it down. Her hand trembled as she picked up her phone and dialed it. Rang once, twice, then a voice answered hello. Alina took a deep breath. Hi, is this Diane Matthews? Yes. Who's calling? My name is Alina Williams, I think. You helped deliver my baby in 2005 at the Brookville Clinic. There was silence on the line, then a soft gasp. I remember you, the voice whispered. Rayan sat on the edge of the counselor's chair, hands tucked between his knees, head down, silent. The room was warm, with soft yellow lighting, and books on the shelves. But Rayan didn't look up. He stared at the floor, the way a child does when he has carried a weight for far too long. Mrs. Linda, the school counselor, sat across from him. She didn't rush him, she simply waited. He had been brought to her office right after the lunchroom incident. Everyone at school was talking about it now. The quiet boy who stood up in the middle of lunch and called the teacher, Mom. Some thought it was a joke, others thought he was crazy. Only Rayan knew the truth, and he was ready to speak. Finally, he looked up. His eyes weren't angry, just tired. I didn't mean to scare her, he said softly. Linda nodded. I don't think you scared her. I think you surprised her. Rayan nodded slowly. She didn't believe me. Well, it was a big thing to hear, especially like that. He sighed. I didn't plan to say it like that. I saw her, and I knew. I couldn't stop myself. Linda leaned forward. How do you know she's your mother? Rayan pulled something from his backpack, a small plastic envelope. Inside it was the photo he had shown Alina, the same black and white picture of a young girl holding a newborn baby. On the back was her name, Alina Williams. He placed the envelope on the table. I found it last year, he said. After my foster parents died, they never told me much about where I came from, but in their attic, I found a box. It had this photo, and a letter. The letter said my real mother's name was Alina. It had her birthday too. Mrs. Linda looked at the photo, carefully, and then you looked her up. Rayan nodded. I searched online. It took a long time, but then I saw her picture on the school website. He smiled for the first time, a small, sad smile. When I saw her, something in me just knew. I can't explain it. I didn't want to believe it at first, but I looked closer. Her smile, her eyes. It felt like I was looking at home. Rayan had been moved from foster home to foster home for years. He was never adopted permanently. Some homes were kind, others were cold. In one home, he was often left alone in a room with no toys, no books, no light, only silence. But through it all, he held on to one thing, the dream of finding his real mother. Not because he hated the past, but because he wanted to know why. Why did she leave him? Why didn't she come for him? Why had no one told him the truth? Now, in that quiet counselor's room, Rayan finally let go of the fear. She didn't abandon me, he said clearly. I think they lied to her. Mrs. Linda's face softened. What makes you say that? Rayan looked at the photo again, was holding me. In the hospital, you don't take a picture like that if you don't care. I think someone took me from her. I think she was told I died. He paused, and I want to know why. At the same time, across the city, Alina was sitting in front of her computer. Her eyes were red, but focused. Her fingers moved quickly. Across the keyboard. She had just come back from meeting Nurse Diane. The truth had shaken her, but it had also given her courage. She wasn't crazy. She hadn't imagined it. Someone had taken her baby, and now that baby was standing in front of her at school. And calling her mom. She opened the government database. Typing slowly. Request. Birth record -2005. Male child, Brookville Clinic. The screen loaded slowly. Her hands were sweating. A list appeared. So many names. So many boys born in April that year. But one line caught her attention. Baby boy A. Williams. No ID number. Status. Transferred. Again, no family name. No adoption agency. No hospital tag. Just ... Moved. Like a package. She leaned back in her chair. They had erased his identity. Later that evening, Alina received a call from the school counselor. Hi, Miss Williams. I just had a long talk with Rayan. I think you need to hear what he told me. Alina sat down slowly, holding her breath. He knows about the photo, about your name, about the date. And he's not angry. He believes you were lied to, not that you abandoned him. Tears welled up in her eyes. He said that, she whispered. Double quotes, yes. And one more thing. He said he remembers a voice, a woman singing a song, a lullaby. He said he always thought he imagined it. Alina froze. There was a lullaby she used to sing, only once. In the hospital, after he was born? Just a soft tune? Just once he remembers it, she asked. Yes, the counselor replied, and he said when he saw you, it came back like a memory. Alina broke down. All the guilt, all the questions, all the years of silence shattered in that moment. She had not failed her child. She had been robbed of him. That night, she sat with her old diary. She opened a page and began to write. Dear Rayan, I don't know how to say these words to your face yet, but I need you to know. I never left you. I never wanted to. They told me you had died. I cried for you. I dreamed of you. I even wrote lullabies I never got to sing. And now, you've come back. You came looking for me, and I promise, I will never let you go again. She folded the page, placed it inside the same envelope as the hospital bracelet, and whispered, tomorrow. I'll give it to him tomorrow. Rayan sat on the edge of his small bed, looking out the window of the foster home he was placed in months ago. The night outside was quiet, but inside, his mind was loud, full of voices from the past, memories he had tried to forget, and now, a new face that changed everything. Alina, his mother. The word felt strange in his mouth, but warm in his chest. He had waited his whole life to feel that word, to believe in it, to belong to someone. Now, after everything he had survived, it had finally happened, but he wasn't ready to smile yet, because the past still sat heavy on his shoulders. The next day at school, he was called to the counselor's office again. Mrs. Linda was kind, as always. She offered him tea. He didn't want it. He just sat quietly, hands folded, eyes focused on the table. She waited a moment, then said softly, I know things are changing fast, and I know it's not easy. But would you like to talk about what life was like before this? Rayan looked up slowly. You mean before I found her? She nodded. He took a long breath, and then he began. I was in 6 homes before I turned 12, he said. The first one, they were okay. Not good, not bad, just quiet. They fed me, sent me to school, gave me a bed. But they never talked to me unless they had to. I stayed there for 2 years. Then one day, they said they were moving, and I couldn't come. Mrs. Linda nodded slowly. And after that, the second home. His voice tightened. That one was bad. He looked away. They locked me in a room when I cried. No toys, just 4 walls and a dirty mattress. I remember one night, I was sick, coughing hard, and no one came. I thought I would die. Mrs. Linda didn't speak. Her hands stayed still, her eyes gentle. I stopped crying after that. I stopped talking too. They said I was too quiet and sent me away. He smiled a small, sad smile. I guess I learned how to survive. The third home was worse. Rayen spoke about it in broken pieces, how the foster father yelled all the time, how the mother never smiled, how he used to hide under the bed when they fought. One day they blamed him for breaking a plate. He hadn't even touched it. They locked me outside that night, he whispered. In the rain. Mrs. Linda covered her mouth, quietly shaken. But I survived that too, he said. Because I kept thinking, maybe somewhere, there was someone who wanted me. Someone like your mother, she asked gently. Rayan nodded. I used to make up stories. That she was looking for me. That maybe she had no idea where I was, but she was searching. It helped me sleep. The fourth and fifth homes were shorter. In one, the foster father got arrested. In another, the family just didn't want a teenage boy with problems. As they said, he was called a problem often, but Rayhan knew the truth. He wasn't a problem. He was lost, and all he ever wanted was to be found. The last home, Rayhan continued, was where I stayed the longest. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, they were old, didn't talk much, but they left me alone, gave me books. Let me think. They died in a car accident 2 years ago. That's when I found the box. Their attic had all kinds of papers. I found my name, the adoption number, and the photo. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the same black and white photo he had shown Alina. This saved me, he said. It was proof that I wasn't crazy, that someone had once held me, smiled at me. But I came from someone? He paused. I searched her name online for months, found a few people, but then I saw her photo on the school website. His eyes softened and I just knew. Mrs. Linda leaned forward slightly. Do you believe she loves you? Rayan nodded. Yes, I see it in her eyes. When I gave her the photo, she didn't fake it, she didn't lie. She cried like she had been waiting to cry for years. He swallowed hard, and she didn't deny me. Not really, she was just shocked, hurt. Mrs. Linda asked, do you want to live with her? Rayan froze. The question felt too big, too soon, but then he nodded, slowly, double quotes, yes, but not just because I want a home. I want to know her. I want her to know me. I want us to figure it out. Together. That evening, Alina sat in her car outside Rayan's foster home. She held the second letter in her hand, the one she had written after hearing Rayan's story from the counselor. She had cried for hours after hearing what he had been through. All those nights alone, all the pain, all the times he thought he was unwanted. She couldn't take that pain away. But she could promise one thing, he would never be alone again. She knocked on the door, a social worker opened it. Alina introduced herself, then held up the legal letter. Confirming her request to begin family connection meetings with Rayan, the woman nodded kindly and said, he's waiting for you. Rayan came to the door slowly. He didn't smile. He didn't run into her arms. But he looked into her eyes and said softly, hi, Mom. Alina's heart almost stopped. She smiled through tears. Hi, baby. They sat on the porch together. Quietly, he held the new letter, read it twice. Then, for the first time, he leaned his head on her shoulder. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just let the moment live. Rayan sat on the edge of his small bed, looking out the window of the foster home he was placed in months ago. The night outside was quiet, but inside, his mind was loud, full of voices from the past, memories he had tried to forget, and now, a new face that changed everything. Alina, his mother. The word felt strange in his mouth, but warm in his chest. He had waited his whole life to feel that word, to believe in it, to belong to someone. Now, after everything he had survived, it had finally happened, but he wasn't ready to smile yet because the past still sat heavy on his shoulders. The next day at school, he was called to the counselor's office again. Mrs. Linda was kind, as always. She offered him tea. He didn't want it. He just sat quietly, hands folded, eyes focused on the table. She waited a moment, then said softly, I know things are changing fast, and I know it's not easy. But would you like to talk about what life was like before this? Rayan looked up slowly. You mean before I found her? She nodded. He took a long breath, and then he began. I was in 6 homes before I turned 12, he said. The first one, they were okay. Not good, not bad, just quiet. They fed me, sent me to school, gave me a bed. But they never talked to me unless they had to. I stayed there for 2 years. Then one day, they said they were moving, and I couldn't come. Mrs. Linda nodded slowly. And after that the second home. His voice tightened. That one was bad. He looked away. They locked me in a room when I cried. No toys, just 4 walls and a dirty mattress. I remember one night, I was sick, coughing hard, and no one came. I thought I would die. Mrs. Linda didn't speak. Her hands stayed still, her eyes gentle. I stopped crying after that. I stopped talking too. They said I was too quiet and sent me away. He smiled a small, sad smile. I guess I learned how to survive. The third home was worse. Rayen spoke about it in broken pieces, how the foster father yelled all the time, how the mother never smiled, how he used to hide under the bed when they fought. One day they blamed him for breaking a plate. He hadn't even touched it. They locked me outside that night, he whispered. In the rain. Mrs. Linda covered her mouth, quietly shaken. But I survived that too, he said. Because I kept thinking, maybe somewhere, there was someone who wanted me. Someone like your mother, she asked gently. Rayan nodded. I used to make up stories. That she was looking for me. That maybe she had no idea where I was, but she was searching. It helped me sleep. The fourth and fifth homes were shorter. In one, the foster father got arrested. In another, the family just didn't want a teenage boy with problems. As they said, he was called a problem often, but Rayhan knew the truth. He wasn't a problem. He was lost, and all he ever wanted was to be found. The last home, Rayhan continued, was where I stayed the longest. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, they were old, didn't talk much, but they left me alone, gave me books. Let me think. They died in a car accident 2 years ago. That's when I found the box. Their attic had all kinds of papers. I found my name, the adoption number, and the photo. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the same black and white photo he had shown Alina. This saved me, he said. It was proof that I wasn't crazy, that someone had once held me, smiled at me. But I came from someone? He paused. I searched her name online for months, found a few people, but then I saw her photo on the school website. His eyes softened and I just knew. Mrs. Linda leaned forward slightly. Do you believe she loves you? Rayan nodded. Yes, I see it in her eyes. When I gave her the photo, she didn't fake it, she didn't lie. She cried like she had been waiting to cry for years. He swallowed hard, and she didn't deny me. Not really, she was just shocked, hurt. Mrs. Linda asked, do you want to live with her? Rayan froze. The question felt too big, too soon, but then he nodded, slowly, double quotes, yes, but not just because I want a home. I want to know her. I want her to know me. I want us to figure it out. Together. That evening, Alina sat in her car outside Rayan's foster home. She held the second letter in her hand, the one she had written after hearing Rayan's story from the counselor. She had cried for hours after hearing what he had been through. All those nights alone, all the pain, all the times he thought he was unwanted. She couldn't take that pain away. But she could promise one thing, he would never be alone again. She knocked on the door, a social worker opened it. Alina introduced herself, then held up the legal letter. Confirming her request to begin family connection meetings with Rayan, the woman nodded kindly and said, he's waiting for you. Rayan came to the door slowly. He didn't smile. He didn't run into her arms. But he looked into her eyes, and said softly, hi Mom. Alina's heart almost stopped. She smiled through tears. Hi baby. They sat on the porch together. Quietly. He held the new letter, read it twice. Then, for the first time, he leaned his head on her shoulder. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just let the moment live. Alina stood outside the city courthouse, her heart pounding in her chest. The wind pulled at her coat, but she didn't feel the cold. Her hands clutched a thick folder full of documents, the adoption papers, the hospital letter, the testimony from Nurse Diane, and her own handwritten statement. It was time to speak up. For years, she had been told to be quiet, told to forget, told that her baby was gone and the past was better left buried. But now, the past had a face, and his name was Rayan. She looked up at the courthouse doors, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. The hearing wasn't a trial, not yet. It was the first legal step, requesting a full investigation into what happened at Brookville Clinic in 2005. The judge was an older woman with sharp eyes and a calm voice. Alina sat in the small courtroom beside her lawyer, a kind woman named Rachel who had taken the case for free. Across from them sat a hospital representative, a man in a gray suit who didn't even look at her once. Miss Williams, the judge said, please explain why you've brought this case forward now. Alina stood, her knees trembling slightly. She opened the folder, took out the letter from the retired nurse, and handed it to the clerk. I was 17 when I gave birth at Brookville Clinic, she began. They told me my baby had died. I was alone. My parents didn't ask questions. I believed them. I cried for him for years. Her voice cracked. Then, this year, he found me. She placed the photograph on the table, the same one Rayan had carried all his life. He is my son. He was taken from me and placed in the system without my permission. I never signed anything. I was never told the truth. The judge read the letter silently. Rachel added, Your Honor, we have reason to believe that Brookville Clinic engaged in unauthorized adoptions and falsified records. Miss Williams' case is one of many. We are requesting access to sealed files from 2000 to 2006 and an official investigation. The judge nodded slowly, her eyes unreadable. This is a serious claim, she said. If proven true, it could lead to criminal charges. The hospital lawyer stood. Your Honor, this was nearly 2 decades ago. The clinic has changed management. We cannot confirm records from that time are even still available. But you're not denying it, Rachel asked sharply. We are. Simply stating we have no current knowledge. The judge raised her hand. That's enough. I will review this request and issue a ruling within 7 days. The gavel struck. The session ended. Outside the courthouse, Alina leaned against the wall, trying to catch her breath. Rachel turned to her. You did great, and I think the judge believes you. But what if they destroy the records? Alina whispered. What if they cover everything up? Rachel shook her head. That's why I filed an emergency hold on their files this morning. They're locked now, legally. They can't touch them. Alina closed her eyes in relief. For the first time in 18 years, she was fighting back. Meanwhile, Rayan sat at the kitchen table in his new temporary foster home, reading a document from Child Services. It explained the next steps. Supervised visits with Alina, DNA testing, psychological evaluations. It all sounded cold. But Rayan didn't feel cold anymore. He felt hopeful. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a sketchbook. Page after page showed drawings of faces, sad faces, lonely faces, eyes that didn't smile. But now, he drew something new. A hand reaching out, a mother holding her son. He didn't finish the drawing yet, not until he could be sure, but he kept adding little pieces to it each day. That weekend, Alina and Rayan met at a family center for their first supervised visit. It was quiet, no cameras, just a warm room with soft chairs and books. Rayan walked in slowly. Alina stood when she saw him. This time they hugged, not a quick hug, not a polite one, a real one. Long and tight. I missed you, he whispered. I missed everything, she replied. They sat down, and she pulled something from her purse. It was a photo album, brand new, but inside, she had placed her own baby pictures, her school photos, her drawings, her dreams. Letters she had written to a child who never got to read them. I want you to know me, she said. Rayan turned each page carefully, quietly. A tear slipped down his cheek. I wish I had this growing up. She reached for his hand. We still have time. Back at home, Alina's phone rang late that night. It was Nurse Diane. They are trying to cover things, she said quickly. One of my old coworkers was contacted by a lawyer from the hospital. They told her not to talk to anyone. Alina's chest tightened. Are they scared? They should be, Diane said. Because I still have copies. Records, notes. I'm ready to give them to the court. You'll testify. I will. Alina couldn't stop smiling. They picked the wrong mother to silence. She said. A few days later, Rachel called with big news. The judge approved our request. She said, we're getting access to the sealed files next week. Alina's hand flew to her mouth. That means we can find others, she asked. Yes, if we're right. There are more children, more mothers, more lies. Rayan, who was sitting beside her, looked up. You're going to help them too? Yes, she said. I have to. He smiled for the first time that day. Then maybe what happened to us wasn't all bad. The heavy boxers arrived on a rainy Thursday morning. Alina stood beside Rachel in a dusty records room at City Hall. The air smelled of old paper and forgotten time. A court officer placed 2 large boxers on the table and said, this is everything. Released by Brookville Clinic, sealed files from 2000 to 2006. Alina's heart beat faster. She stared at the boxers as if they were treasure chests. Except this treasure was made of pain, loss, and long-buried truth. Rachel opened the first one. Inside were folders, hundreds of them, each one with a patient name, a file number, and a date. Alina reached for the first file. Her hands shook. They worked in silence for hours. Page after page, name after name. Some files were complete. Others had missing pages or strange red stamps that read, transfer no record or internal confidential. It didn't take long to see the pattern. Almost every girl was between 15 and 19 years old. Most were listed as unaccompanied, or from out of town. And far too many babies were marked deceased, but with no death certificate, no autopsy, and no burial record. Alina felt sick. These girls, they were told the same thing I was, she whispered. Rachel nodded. Her voice was calm but firm. And the babies. Most of them didn't die. They were transferred. 2 adoption agencies, Alina added. Yes, under fake names, with no biological connection listed. It was human trafficking, Alina. Dressed up as private adoption, Alina's fingers clenched into fists. These poor mothers. All this time, they thought their babies were gone. Rachel looked at her. And now, we proved they weren't. In the second box, something strange happened. Alina pulled out a thin folder. It had no label, just a handwritten number on the front, #1437. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single page, and one name that made her blood freeze. Diane Matthews. The nurse. Alina's hand trembled as she read the report. Employee reported discomfort with transfer protocols. Filed internal complaint. In 2005, recommendation. monitor, or dismiss quietly. Beneath that line, a signature, Dr. Leonard Green, Medical Director, Brookville Clinic. Alina's eyes narrowed. They silenced her. She said. Rachel leaned in. They kept tabs on anyone who questioned them. That's why Diane left. She wasn't just tired, she was pushed out. And Dr. Green? Alina asked. Rachel opened her laptop and searched the name. Seconds later, a page popped up. Dr. Leonard Green, current board member at Children First Adoption Agency. Alina's jaw dropped. That's the same agency where Rayon was listed. I saw the name in his file. Rachel stared at the screen. So the same man who ran the clinic now runs the adoption agency that took the babies. The pieces were coming together. This wasn't just about one hospital. It was a whole system, designed to steal children from scared young mothers and sell them into adoption. That night, Alina met with Diane again. They sat in her quiet home, sipping tea. With the folders spread across the table, Diane stared at her old file with watery eyes. I knew something was wrong, she said. I remember one night, a girl gave birth and begged to see her baby. They said he was taken to NICU, but I never saw him again. Alina showed her the signature. Do you remember Dr. Green? Diane's face tightened. Oh yes, he was the one who started it all. He used to tell us, these girls can't raise a baby. We're doing them a favor. Alina shook her head. He made money off lies. Diane looked down. And I was part of it? I should have spoken louder. You did, Alina said gently. You wrote me a letter. That saved me. Diane wiped a tear from her cheek. I want to speak at the hearing. I want to say what they did. Alina placed a hand on hers. We'll do it together. Meanwhile, Rayan sat in his room, reading a letter Alina had given him. It was one she wrote after the court session. In it, she wrote, You were never lost. You were stolen. And now I see clearly, it was never your fault. It was never mine. It was theirs. But now, we have each other again, and I will never let you go. Rayan folded the letter and held it to his chest. For the first time, he didn't feel like a foster child. He felt like a son. He felt wanted. The next week, Alina and Rachel submitted their findings to the court. Over 40 suspicious cases, 12 nurse notes, 6 internal complaints, and 1 full report on Dr. Leonard Green. The judge reviewed the documents carefully. After a long silence, she looked up. It is horrifying, she said. I am granting a full investigation. The state will review every file, and I will personally order Dr. Leonard Green to appear in court. The gavel struck again. Justice was finally on its way. Outside, reporters were already gathering. Somehow, the story had leaked. A young mother reunited with her son, a secret adoption ring, a respected doctor now under fire. Alina gave a short statement to the cameras. I am not here for revenge. I am here for the truth. Not just for me and my son, but for every mother who cried into the dark, and every child who thought they were forgotten. Rayan stood beside her. He didn't speak, but his hand was holding hers, and that was enough. Journalists, lawyers, former clinic workers, and even other mothers sat on wooden benches, whispering to each other. Cameras were not allowed inside, but every major news channel waited outside the building. What had started as a quiet reunion between a boy and his mother had now grown into a national scandal. Alina sat at the front beside her lawyer Rachel. Her hands were cold, but her eyes were sharp. She wasn't scared anymore. Beside her, Rayan sat quietly, dressed in a plain black shirt and jeans. He didn't say much, but the way he sat beside his mother, straight and calm, said everything. This was no longer just about their pain. It was about every child taken without consent. Every mother told her baby had died. Every lie signed into a file and buried in a dusty box. And now, finally, the lies were coming to light. The judge entered. The room stood. Then silence. Court is now in session. Case file number 2486. Alina Williams versus Brookville Clinic and Dr. Leonard Green. All eyes turned to the defense table. Dr. Leonard Green sat stiffly in a gray suit. His hair was white now, but his face looked proud. Too proud for a man who had taken so much. He didn't look at Alina. He didn't look at Rayen. He looked only at the judge, as if the rest of them didn't matter. Rachel stood. Your Honor, today we will show documents, witness testimony, and first-hand accounts, proving that Dr. Green knowingly ran illegal adoption practices under the disguise of medical protocol. These actions destroyed families, caused years of suffering, and were never punished. Until now, the judge nodded. You may begin. The first witness was Nurse Diane. She walked slowly to the front, nervous but firm. She told everything. About the young girls brought into the clinic, the way the babies were taken immediately after birth, how nurses were ordered to give false updates, how paperwork was altered, and how anyone who asked too many questions was transferred or let go quietly. Dr. Green never even looked at her as she spoke, but Rayan did. He stared at her with eyes full of quiet gratitude. She had been the only one brave enough to write that letter. Without it, he and Alina would still be strangers. When Diane finished, the courtroom was silent, until the judge finally said, Thank you for your bravery, Ms. Matthews. Next, Alina took the stand. She clutched a folded paper in her hands. Her original birth report, the one that had been sealed for almost 2 decades. I was 17, she began. I was scared, but I was ready to love my child. I gave birth at Brookville. I remember the moment clearly. I remember hearing him cry. I asked to hold him, but they said he was sick. Then later, they told me he was gone. Her voice cracked. She glanced at Ryan. I cried every night, but I believed them, because I was told not to question doctors. I was told it was better not to talk about it. I lived with guilt, with pain, until one day. My son found me. She unfolded the paper. This is the truth they hid from me. The file that proves I was never asked for permission, that my baby didn't die, he was sent away. And no one told me. She looked directly at Dr. Green. You didn't just steal children, you stole years. And you told mothers like me that we didn't matter. Dr. Green's lawyer objected, argumentative. The judge waved it off. Let her finish. Alina took a deep breath. We matter, and we are not afraid anymore. The courtroom was quiet, but hearts were loud. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for. The judge turned to Dr. Green. Dr. Leonard Green, you may speak now. He stood slowly. His hands were steady. I served as medical director of Brookville Clinic from 1990 to 2007, he said calmly. During that time, I made decisions I believed were in the best interest of the children. Many of the young women who gave birth were not prepared to raise a child. We ensured those children had stable homes. Gasps filled the room. He went on. We worked with private agencies. We followed what we believed were ethical standards. Perhaps we failed to keep proper paperwork. But never did we act with cruelty. Rachel stood immediately. Your Honor, we have over 40 sealed records that say otherwise, including files marked deceased without medical reason. That's not poor paperwork, that's deception. Dr. Green looked annoyed. We saved those children from poverty, from pain. Alina stood suddenly. She didn't speak, not right away. She simply walked over to Ryan and held up the photo of him as a newborn. You saved no one, she said. You just made sure no one ever found the truth. The judge raised her hand. Enough. I've heard enough. She turned to Dr. Green. Your clinic violated the law. Consent was not obtained. Records were sealed unlawfully. And your role in this will be investigated further by the state attorney's office. She looked to the courtroom, but today's session was about more than justice. It was about courage, about healing, and about restoring a bond that should have never been broken. She turned to Alina. Miss Williams, you have shown great strength. The court supports your request to adopt Ryan Williams back under your legal custody. Alina gasped. Ryan sat still for a moment, then slowly. He smiled, really smiled. That evening, as reporters shouted outside the courthouse, Alina and Ryan walked out hand in hand. Flashes went off. Microphones reached toward them. Miss Williams, do you feel justice was served? What will you do now? Alina looked at her son. Then she said clearly, now, we go home. In the car, Ryan looked out the window at the fading sky. Do you think they'll shut that place down? He asked. Alina nodded. They have to. There are too many people speaking out now. We opened a door that can't be closed. Ray pulled the folded letter from his pocket, the first one she ever wrote him. I want to keep this forever, he said. You can, she replied, and you'll never have to wonder again. I'm right here. He leaned his head against her shoulder. I'm glad I called you Mom that day. She smiled, eyes full. So am I.